Miyamoto. I'll chair this afternoon session. I'm from University of Tsukuba in Japan. I'd like to the first presenter, Dr. Gunars Neiders, who is a doctor of electrical engineer and psychology. He is recovered person who stutter and licensed psychologist. He is the author of dissertation on rational emotive behavior therapy and stuttering, and book From Stuttering to Fluency, Manage Your Emotion and Live More Fully. And the paper Rational Motive Behavior Therapy of Stuttering via Skype Case Series Studies, presented at the IFA Congress in 2015. The title of their presentation is Demonstration of Rational Emotive Behavior Therapy of Stuttering, Teletherapy Techniques with Extensive Audience Participation. Dr. Gunars, would you start?
Thank you. So, today I'm going to be like my President Donald Trump. Look at all of the millions of people that we see here. Oh. They're all attending. Next chart, please. This is just a disclosure that I don't have much more besides the books to sell. And what I want to encourage is if anybody can either download the app or come to my website or anywhere else and any of these things, use it freely. Don't think that even though I have a copyright down there, that doesn't mean that much. Now, we all know that Gene Stuttering Iceberg has been voted time and time again. But almost all of this stuttering therapy today has been on the top of the visible part. There's the mouth, the secondary symptoms, and not really where stuttering starts and ends, and that is in the head. Next one. And this is that I almost did what was taught on the first chart. I said that the ordinary speech paradigm is you're more involved in the speech formation. REBTS is more involved in the self-talk system because everybody talks with themselves all day long. You know, they say, I'm doing well, oh, this is horrible, I gotta hurry, and all of that. Now, go back to what? I think that REBT can be superimposed on all of the other kinds of stuttering therapy because, as I indicated, some of it is visible, but we're going after the invisible, and that can be also approached. Now, what we have is a paradigm. If you have a difficult speech situation, you can either have irrational or unhelpful self-talk, or you can have a rational self-talk. If you have irrational self-talk, then you probably have emotions that you're anticipatory anxiety, it's called. If you have rational self-talk, you don't have that much anticipatory anxiety. So in that aspect, when you have anticipatory anxiety, you struggle with speech and force it. If you don't have any anticipatory anxiety, either subconscious or conscious, there is minimal struggle with the speech. Next chart, please. Now, some of the irrational self-talk is, we have heard it elsewhere also. I must talk perfectly fluently. Good luck. It would be awful if I stuttered. Well, I haven't heard any devils choking me when I stutter. I can't stand stuttering. It's a value judgment, because you're still here, so you must be standing it. And the fourth one is, if I stutter, I'm not as good as somebody else who doesn't stutter. And that is a really common thing which people have, is that they imagine that if they stutter, somehow it makes them less worthwhile of the human being. And then there are some people who damn themselves as, man, I shouldn't have stuttered, you know, I'm no good, I should be damned. And then we imagine in practical situations as job interviews that sometimes people will say, well, if he stutters, we won't offer him a job. Now, LJ, who just went on a job interview, tell me whether you stuttered on it or not.
Yeah, I had some stutters, but it wasn't a hard stutter. I was able to apply the principles that Dr. Neiders is talking about right now. You know, so instead of being concerned about my speech during the interview, you know, I was able to replace the irrational thoughts that would tend to come in my mind with the rational thoughts. So the short answer is the interview went well, and the stutters were not as severe as they had been in the past.
And did you get a job offer?
I actually did. Yeah, I actually did, because it really didn't happen to me in the past. You know, I would go to like many interviews and not get any offers, but I did get the job offer, and I unfortunately had to turn it down.
He is greedy. Wanted to have more money. Next child.
Is it possible to ask questions?
Yeah.
So, from a practical point of view, can you give examples of irrational thoughts that you would have had in the past and rational thoughts that you had in this job interview? And in addition, if this change, if you felt this change affected the way you presented yourself in your body language and your ease or not ease?
Yeah, so
Can I say, we're going to be doing that example.
yes,
And so in that example, take his lead.
sure.
Now, this chart may be very soon somewhat outdated. I heard Dr. Shelley Jo Kraft, who is involved in genetics, and it may be a bit more complex than the model I have there. But what the main thing to take away in this one is that some of our thoughts are subconscious, and they're somewhere stored in the genes, in the brain, and they have to be addressed. And the only way I know how to is by us going through stuttering experiences and finding out that the sky doesn't fall. It gets a bit lower, but it doesn't fall. Next chart. In the immediate reaction, somewhere in our subconscious, we tend to have an emotional response that is almost instantaneous. That is, if you have a stressful situation, the brain has stored past traumatic experiences. And it triggers the fight, flight, or freeze reaction. And that is what starts our stuttering, or starts the initial part of it. Now, in REBTS, we not only have the subconscious mind, we also talk about the prefrontal cortex. And in that, we use the old Stoic saying by Epictetus, we're not disturbed by what happens on the outside. We're really disturbed by how we interpret what happens on the outside. So, as applied to stuttering, what a stressful situation may do is evoke unhelpful self-talk and attitudes. And then we get disturbed feelings of anxiety, shame, and it messes with our fine motor control of the speech mechanisms. And the thing is, prefrontal cortex involves Broca area where up until now is where we have thought that it generates the speech signals. To achieve recovery in REBS, what we do is we work on the self-talk and emotions. Then we do actually going into real-world situations, and we reprogram our subconscious mind. But REBT is also good to keep the client motivated, because most of the individuals who I know who have started in stuttering therapy, their motivation starts to lag. And we have a tool called Easy Bounces. We'll do a small exercise that we do over the internet. So I will say an easy bounce, you repeat it. Apple.
Apple.
Bear.
Bear.
Cat.
Cat.
Dog.
Dog.
And so on. And we make the next chart. The paraphrasing, I always have hard time to remember things. So I said, what's a nice thing to remember? Maui. It's in Hawaii. First of all, motivation, anxiety, shame, and guilt reduction. That there's also the unconditional self-acceptance and acknowledgement that you now start. And immersion in the easy bounces. The thing is, we're people of habits. We're very used to struggling with our speech. And what I'm asking the individuals is to do the easy bounces even if they're not talking to any other person, but only talking to themselves. But then also, what we do is we ask the individual in every situation insert an easy bounce. That translates to voluntary stuttering in other areas. You know, it's you're showing that the small repetition is not bad. This is where I go against the counting of SSIs, stuttering syllables. To me, it doesn't matter. I think that an individual could have an easy stutter as this. Nobody cares at all. So easy bounces, yes, I got a headache again of myself. What it is that before we started to stutter, we did do mama, dada, or I don't know how they say it in Japanese. Do you have a small child who says something repetitiously?
Mm-hmm.
What do they say? That was fascinating. Okay. So much for that.
Yeah, so much for that.
So, and then Easy Bounces introduced the sound into a silent block. And sometimes we keep a stutter going just in order to desensitize ourselves. And, you know, the last step, I am really say, the experts like I, when I hear in the back of the head the footsteps of an oncoming block, I just preempt it or substitute for it an easy bounce. LJ, have you ever done it?
Oh, yeah. I have done easy bounces, and when I feel the stutter coming, I have applied the preempting.
And do you think for you it is of value? You're not talking about everybody else, but you.
Do I think it is of value?
To you.
Yes, it is of value, because there are situations where, you know, I can feel a stutter is coming, you know, instead of trying to force or having a hard block, you know, I preempt it so that the speech is forward moving.
Okay. Now let's keep the presentation forward moving. Now, this is very important, is that what I call recovery in REBD is the absence or minimum feelings of shame, fear, anticipatory anxiety. And there is no need to avoid sounds, words, or situations. Occasional effortless and forward moving disfluencies, like this fluency, it's okay. But it's a natural sounding speech. It has its intonations up and down. It doesn't go, now I am able to speak. Next start. And the biggest aspect, I don't know how smart all of you guys are, but the biggest aspect is I used to spend a lot of time thinking about stuttering. Now I have time to think about other things. Stuttering is not the all-encompassing value, that is the all-encompassing thought. Do you now still do the thinking about the stuttering all of the time?
Yeah, no, so I have a ladder, you know, when I look at myself, I think of myself as a person with many hats, you know. I'm a son, I'm a dad, I'm an engineer, I'm a leader in my church, you know. In the past, my stuttering was like on the top of the ladder, but now it's like somewhere down there.
Just in order to inform our audience, how many times have we met in person?
So this is the first time I'm actually meeting Dr. Neiders in person. So this conference is awesome to me, actually, because I've been talking to him for the past 2 or 3 years online, and we've never met, so this is the first time.
Yes. Okay. We go on. And I think that we can have dignity even though we stutter. Get me the last chart back again. But there's the biggest issue is often people ask me, how will I find a wife or a husband? And if you're going through this and have recovered from stuttering, whether partial way or like me all the way, then it's easy. But when I met my wife, my lovely wife, I did say, I have a handicap that I stutter. Okay, we gotta get moving faster. So the thing is, as Hannah, you asked, is how do we go from irrational self-talk to disputing this self-talk to rational to minimum anticipatory anxiety to free-flowing speech? Next one. The helpful rational self-talk, it starts with an acknowledgement, is at the moment you do stutter. There's nothing. And it minimizes the unhealthy emotions, thus promotes recovery from stuttering. The self-talk is based on reality, logical, pragmatic, and non-absolute, flexible. As an example, when I heard the talk on the genetics, I said, yeah, I don't have all of the answers. Next time that I speak, I will have more on genetics. Next time. Now the unhelpful is based on fantasy, wishful thinking, not logical, not useful in solving problems. And it is people, and I have seen them in the conference, they absolutely have to hold onto their model what stuttering is and is not. And it would be more educational if they could say, let me hear the speaker and not advocate my theory of stuttering. I don't think I have advocated mine too much. Next one. There's unhealthy negative emotions, and that lead us to self-defeating behaviors and stops us from getting our goals. Next chart. So we compare. Anybody want to guess why some emotions are unhealthy and some are healthy? Anybody? Raise up their hand. Gonzalo.
I don't know, but I'm curious about, I saw this slide before and I'm curious about it.
Yeah, well, that is why I asked about it. Because that is, the thing is, sometimes bad things happen.
Yeah.
Okay? And let's state which of those unhealthy we want to talk about. Okay, shame is that you really think there's something wrong with me, and it's extreme. It beats you down. Whereas disappointment says, this time I didn't do as well as I could. But you first separate out yourself into your actions and don't take that one characteristic that makes you a whole person. As stuttering does not make you a whole person.
And what about remorse?
Remorse, which side is?
It's the healthy part.
That is, if you have guilt. Yeah, you know, and you ever stop somewhere and seen another woman beside your girlfriend, and you feel
What an example.
And you feel guilty. You feel guilty. You know, you said, I shouldn't have done it, but this is really bad. I didn't mean to do it. The remorse is, well, I really would have been better off if I wouldn't have done it.
I got it.
You got it. All right.
Next slide.
Brain functions, okay. That is, B for amygdala is the subconscious mind. And it gets desensitized. And the prefrontal cortex, PFC, is able to sometimes overcome what we're wired to do. As an example, if I saw a snake, my subconscious would be to jump. But then, if I actually looked at it, it was only a piece of garden hose. So then I said, oh. We sometimes imagine that a speech situation is very, very dangerous. And it's usually not. Next one. So the tasks of REBT is to detect unhelpful, irrational self-talk, dispute the self-talk, arrive at a new, more effective self-talk. We can go into the ABCs, and that is one way of doing it. Now, next chart. We arrive at effective new self-talk by pragmatic disputing. Does it help us? Empirical disputing. Is there any evidence? And logical disputing. Does it make any sense? Where are we now? In pragmatic disputing, we say, does it help us? Next chart. Empirical is, where's the evidence? And logical is it logical to think that this situation is awful? And can I really not stand what's going on or what I am fearing? Next chart. Now, we'll answer your question. If my help is on the ball. Okay, well, that is, I can't stand. This is awful.
Hold on, I don't know what's going on now.
There it is, okay. We have an online form, which my co-author put online. And I want LJ to fill it out and see what you would do in a job. Was it a job interview?
Yeah, so this form outlines like step-by-step processes. So the first part, step one, is to describe whatever the situation is. So we can say in this case, a job interview. And then the second step is to identify the unhealthy negative emotions and your self-defeating the behavior. And the good thing about this form is that as you hover around, the text that's in blue, it gives you like this suggested text. So the first question will be, what are the unhealthy negative emotions that you're experiencing? So it could be depression, rage, anxiety, shame, embarrassment.
Be a bit more specific on the job.
All right, so
And
if
you
it's-
don't have to read all of them.
Yeah.
What in the old days did you experience?
Yeah, so for me, for the job interview, it would be anxiety, just even like days before the actual interview, feeling very anxious, just thinking about it. So the unhealthy negative emotion could be anxiety. And then step 3, you identify your irrational beliefs. What are your irrational beliefs about the situation? And then if you hover around it, it gives you suggested text. So under the demands, there are a number of things that can be taking place. But for me, it was I must be fluent. I must not stutter. So the demand I was putting there was I must. And then you can go on and actually feel all the steps, the orphalizing, low frustration, tolerance. But for the sake of time, we're just going to stick with one.
Okay, on that demands, what it usually is, I must talk perfectly or else I won't get the job. And this time, you went down.
All right, step 4 now is dispute that irrational belief. What are your disputing question? So it could be something like, why must I be fluent? Like is there any law that was passed? We are in Japan now. I haven't read all the laws in Japan, but I don't know if there's any law in Japan that says that I must not stutter. I can stutter if I want to. So why must I be fluent? Sorry, I'm not good at typing. And then step 5, I identify your rational beliefs. What are your rational beliefs about that situation? So it could be something like, even though I do not like to stutter, it's okay if I stutter. I can use easy bounces, forward moving speech if I stutter.
Yeah. Now, we want to stop and discuss it. What kind of things do you think you would think on a job interview? What would be your thoughts, that is, if you came to the States and wanted to have a postdoctoral in whatever you do, what do you do?
First of all, I have to have a doctorate.
Well, that's a start. That is, we say there are two kinds of people, those who succeed and those who don't. The people who succeed when they hit a hurdle, as not having a doctorate, say, okay, do I want to go over the hurdle or not? And if you decide to go over the hurdle, then you do whatever it takes to do that. But if you went on another kind of an interview, whatever.
So speaking from past experience, I would avoid going to job interviews because I would automatically think or even believe that I couldn't pass the interview because of my stuttering. A person would think X, Y, Z about me.
And how accurate is it?
Well, I've never never tested it because I'm.
We haven't tested it. Well, Counselor may have his stuff. just kidding. You know, that the thing is we gotta look reality in the eyes. The probability may be smaller that you get a job interview at a certain spot. But if you do enough job interviews,
No.
you will get a job.
Yeah, it's a totally, I recognize it, a totally irrational thought, and yet it's so strong.
So what could you do in order to stop believing that?
Start doing job interviews.
And also asking, and also reminding yourself a couple times a day is that that's irrational.
No.
Yeah. And then, yes.
The cognitive process of reminding myself and doing an investigation like this and showing that it's not rational is important for me.
But the issue is actually, sometimes you do have to step outside of your comfort zone.
Mm-hmm.
That is, comfort is nice, but if you always want to be comfortable, you're going to be always where you are. So, courage is not that you're not afraid of it. Courage is doing it in spite of you being afraid. Anybody else want to add in anything? Okay. So, when you went on this job interview, in the end, what was your rational emotions? What were?
Yeah, so for that specific job interview I had, I really didn't have any concerns, but the healthy emotion would be maybe concern if I had started, you know, and everyone would come out, so maybe concern everyone.
Yeah, that's a possibility. Okay, and then do you know any, well, a non-answer is that the self-helping homework is that go out and do the interviews. That's the action which will convince your subconscious mind that, hey, I can do it. We can.
One has to go, I feel, sorry for interrupting, one has to go through this inquiry about your beliefs to show yourself that your beliefs are irrational, and not just go out and do the interviews, because you might go out and do the interviews and not get jobs.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean that your beliefs were rational. So.
Because that is, you might have not gotten the job because you were too short.
Right.
Or
not qualified for
yeah.
whatever reason. So the lack of getting the job should not reinforce the irrational belief.
But what can you do after the job interview? You can go back and call them up and find out who got the job and why they got the job.
You can, but actually practically very few, if any, workplaces will give that information.
See, my wife will stop taking the pictures or do it. In your workplace, she's a CEO of a small company. Do you answer the people who got the job or why they got it?
Very
Somebody
few
came
people
back.
ever ask, but if they ask, there are lots of laws now. So if they ask, you can tell them some things, and you have to decide if your organization is willing to risk getting sued if you give them too much. But generally speaking, as an individual, in my job search over the years, I always called and asked why I didn't get a job. And that actually gave me information that then I worked on learning the skills that they told me I didn't have. Don't know how that works in today's society, though.
Also, it will work in different ways in different countries.
Oh, yes.
Likely, yeah.
Yeah. Next chart. So we found out, demands is, I have a whole bunch of these irrational ideas, and we have a whole bunch of the charts. And let's do one of them. Let's go off of the demands, and let's go, say, on this one. I like this one. Most of the individuals that I know who stutter really need to be liked or loved. Now, it's not totally irrational, because when we were evolving as a human species, we needed the environment of a group to help us. And in various cultures, there's still more of that feeling. But the irrational self-talk is everybody should like and love me. If they don't, it's because of my stutter. Well, not always because of the stutter. And the recovery self-talk is, although I would like to be accepted and admired by everyone, I understand this is an impossible goal. Some people will reject me for my stutter or for other reasons. This is a fact of life. And the action assignment is, ask your parents and friends if they ever were rejected for reasons other than stuttering. Ask how they dealt with the rejection. And I added it. Why fit in when I am born to stand out? You know, that is, you don't have to be exactly made as out of a cookie cutter, except in some cultures it's more encouraged. Okay. Time urgency is a good one. All right, LJ, do that one.
Oh, time urgency, maybe trying to please other people, you know, having that time pressure on you, like say you're at work and there's a discussion going on and you feel like you have to jump in immediately, you know, like why do you have to subject yourself on somebody else's time pressure, you know, so you can actually take your time and say what you have to say. And so for PEWS recovery self talk, you know, if it's an issue of interruption, somebody interrupting you, while it might not be the best experience, it's not the end of the world if it happens. So the action assignment is insert some extra pauses in the talk, do some easy bounces, and extend the sound until you feel it in control. Only then we finish the word.
Yes.
How do you do this in practical terms, in clinical terms, when someone has this kind of irrational self-talk, and then what you told the person, it's like other possible thoughts you discuss?
Well, you often ask, how do you feel now? You know, that is, if they have had a long block. So if I had that kind of a block, or a student or a client who had that kind of block, I would ask them, what were you thinking at that time? And almost 9 times out of 10, severe stutterers have really the feeling that they have to get out, you know, get the sound done. And then you say, what can you do about it? And instead of just having a cookie cutter answer, you and the client come up with an answer. Some individuals you can do logic. In some individuals you have to go out of the clinic, but if he's on the internet, I can't step out of the room. On the internet, you can still use a cell phone, and show them that you can do a voluntary long block and not have.
And on these action assignments, like usually you do it first. Let's imagine you're modeling, putting extra time. You do it first in a phone call, and then the person who's working with you see how you do it, or you just tell him how to do it.
It depends on the individual.
Okay.
See, that the thing is we're all different, and you got to be, if you can, you've got to be sensitive who the person is, because there is some individuals, and I often have engineers like LJ, just tell him do it, he does it. Is that right?
I do most of the things you ask me to do. Most of that.
He was actually in Zimbabwe Army. You know, that's why he does it that way. No, okay. Any follow-up on that? Anybody else? Yes?
I have a question. If someone has stuttering, maybe this way and to granted that someone can say what you think that such a kind of therapy is enough, and it should maybe used together with an fluent therapy of modification, because I wonder if something like this, I think that this can be very helpful, but I don't know if it's enough in the case if somebody has a very serious problem with stuttering.
What we do is we have immersion in easy repetitions. And I often ask the people to spend 15 minutes, half hour a day, talking to themselves using easy repetitions. So the severity somehow starts to change, especially if in conversations they insert one easy stutter per conversation. And then if they're in a public place, they act as if they're on the phone and they still do easy repetitions. But I may have misunderstood what you asked, so John Solo will answer for me.
Sharing a little bit my experience, what I feel is this kind of therapy and Gunars' book, at least in our experience in our clinic, helps us a lot. We have an integrated approach, combination between stuttering modification and some techniques of voice shaping. And sometimes it was difficult because people have very strong negative thoughts and feelings. And what I felt was this knowledge helped me a lot to unblock some cases or to move faster, mostly in the transference process and changing the beliefs and thoughts. So I believe whatever the therapy you provide, thinking about speech, this knowledge, if you combine, I believe it can be very helpful. But of course, this is my experience.
And also, I wanted to add something. So I've actually had like a number of therapies as well, but they were mainly focused on speech mechanics. You know, so I went to like a 2-week intense class and it would work for that specific situation, but like a week after it would just wear out. You know, so this kind of therapy here works for me because the thing is sometimes I stutter and sometimes I don't. So there's definitely something going on in the mind there. So having a combination of doing an inside-out approach, or help me instead of just focusing on the outside only.
And this makes sense about all the research that's coming out about how the amygdala works, and even the new work of Neiders about motivation to movement, even about speech. If your unconscious process, it's with a very strong avoidance, and I believe that this kind of therapy can help to change the way people think, and it will become more easier to speech therapists to develop speech tools, whatever kind of speech that they're providing.
Now, there are other irrationalities, but we will move on past those. Let's just move through to where I need to talk about the homework or whatever. That one, the general session. Okay, that is, you usually, even though I'm not a client-centered kind of therapist, you still have to hear what the client wants to talk about. You don't, even if you think the whole hour is wasted, you've got to give the client what he wants to talk about. And, yes. Really? Okay. And then we go over the homework, we go over the philosophy and the client's irrationalities and all of that. But at the end of it, every time I ask is, how did it go? And if it didn't go according to what they wanted, then I know with that client, anyway, I have to change. And think of yourself as a good musical instrument. You have to play what you can do, not act as somebody else. And this also means when you do self-therapy, does everybody understand what self-therapy is? Anybody raise up their hand who doesn't understand what self-therapy is?
What I understand by self-therapy is reading and learning by myself to try to figure out what's good for me.
Yes.
Right?
And
is that what you mean?
Yes, but also you've got to set some goals for your own self. Goals meaning, are your emotions changing? Are your beliefs changing? Sometimes they're outside easy repetitions. I'm against counting disruptions in speech. Okay, next one. And the homework assignments, we have talked a bit about it. Yeah. So it's now is totally question time.
We have 5 minutes for discussion. Any comments and questions?
One thing which I've always wondered about the title of the book, From Stuttering to Fluency. Why is it necessary for you to emphasize the fluency? Because practically, if we're managing our emotions and we live fully, we can manage our emotions and live fully, and also stutter. Less or more, but it comes to a point where it doesn't matter. So,
Well, have you heard that sometimes you wish you could take the title back? That is, what would have been better is from, well, the outcome shouldn't have been fluency, the outcome should be the subtitle of the book is better. That is, manage your emotions and live more fully.
okay.
That is a better title. In stuttering, manage your emotions, live more fully. Now, in my experience, if I get a hold of somebody, they usually are able to, after they manage their emotions really, then their stuttering just melts away. You know, that's my experience. Not so?
I don't have a question.
You don't have.
Yeah.
Anybody else?
I was going to just add what Hanan said here. I actually had the same question about the title, but after I read the book, I'm like, wow, this is interesting. Like the title could have been changed. And we just had that conversation right the other day.
So, if I can then ask you again, in that job interview, what were your rational thoughts as opposed to irrational thoughts which you had in the past? If you can give a couple examples.
All right. So before I went through this, my irrational thoughts would be just anxiety. You know, even before I started, you know, I would have been defeated. You know, like it could be weeks before the interview, I'm already concerned. Instead of spending time preparing for my interview, you know, I'm busy worrying about my speech. Am I going to be good? You know, they're not going to like me because I stutter. You know, so after I had this, it wasn't about my stutter anymore. You know, I wasn't really afraid. The other thing, I was afraid to let people know that I stutter. You know, I was putting so much demands on me that I must be fluent. I must be fluent. Nobody should know that I stutter. So I had to hide it. You know, and I had to ask myself, why am I hiding? Like, you know, is there really a law out there that says I can't stutter? What happens if I stutter? You know, the world's not going to end. You know, things are still going to go on.
So in your recent interview, did you stutter?
I did. Yeah, I did stutter. It was open, but I was confident.
Okay. And you were offered the job.
Yeah. I started just the same way as I started now. You know, it's forward moving speech because I used to really block and.
Okay.
Did that answer it?
Yes. Thank you.
Good. Now, time is up.
Yeah. Thank you, Dr. Guzman. This session is ended. I'm sorry, time is over.